Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the far end of the earth called Montauk. I don't know about the rest of you, I drove out here last night pretty late, and it went about an hour longer than I expected it to, because it's a long way out here. So thank you. I heard someone telling a story about having come from Minneapolis, and by the way, one of our moderators, reporters, Wayne Friedman, came from L.A. Took him like, how long, Wayne? Yeah, 4.5 hour flight, and then 4.5 hours after he landed. So anyhow, sorry to bring you all the way out here. It's beautiful. We've been here before. We've loved it, and a couple of years ago we had been here and decided to come back. I hope you enjoy it. There's a lot to do in the next few days. And we've been doing these inside. By the way, I'm Ken Fadner. That's me, founder of. I used to say publisher of MediaPost, but now I say founder, which means I've gone into some other realm where I don't really do much anymore. And but people still let me come to these things. And so anyhow, we have a bunch of MediaPost people here, so. They're almost always lurking around you somewhere in case you have any questions or needs. And we've been doing these shows, the Insider Summit series, since 2006. That makes this our 14th year of doing a show in this format. The first ones were in email, and then we did search, and then a little bit later, social and mobile. And we did our first video summit, Video Insider Summit. That was when video was its own thing and TV was its own thing, back in 2013, 2014. And then we did our first TV summit TV Insider Summit in 2016, and they were still kind of their own thing, separate. And we thought, well, let's talk to TV people about the impending changes that are coming to the TV world. But we didn't really incorporate video that much into it, other than as this specter of future problems that was going to infect, that's not the good word, revolutionize the industry. And but then we merged them together finally in 2018 into the TV and Video Insider Summit. And of course we know that basically these are, I don't know that much about it, but I'm told that these are all more or less one world these days, all fueled by data and driven by a unified view of your consumer. And that's what we have been talking about and are going to talk about here in the next few days. We're delighted to have sponsoring us here for your sponsoring feeding you breakfast. They've sponsored the breakfast. We're delighted to have Facebook. They've been on board with us in many different ways over many years, and we appreciate their support. And you're going to hear this morning from Eric Geisler, who's the director of the U.S. agency team. And Eric, come on up.
Thank you so much. Good morning. So if the caffeine hasn't hit you guys yet, we can just all ponder off to your left and right. We'll just look at the ocean a little bit. If you see me doing that, it's because the caffeine's starting to kick in a little bit. But it is early, and I thank you guys for having us this morning. So I not only lead the agency team, but what I did for Facebook a few years ago was they really put me in charge of trying to figure out how Facebook becomes not the infection of this TV and video marketplace, and really tries to figure out how new economy brands, companies like ours, help to bring this thing together, the TV and video, and make them a little less disparate. And I think I say it that way because it's fair to say we are still too separate in many, many ways. It's too complicated. And what we're going to try and do is simplify it to the extent that we can and push this thing along. So what I would love to do is, this year is our first upfront at Facebook. And I saw a few things along the way, and I thought we'd share some of those insights, because I think it's a lot of things that are on your mind. Hopefully it's a very humbling thing. I'm going to talk about some things that we didn't do well, some things that I think we did do well, some things that it still remains to be seen whether we've done well. I'm not selling anything today, which is also easier. But what I want to do in this non-upfront cycle period, just talk a little bit as we prepare for next year's upfront and take some of these learnings. So that's what we're going to do. Thank you guys so much for having us. All right, so I think it's probably important. Not everybody knows what Facebook Watch is. So I'm going to give a little primer on what Facebook watches. This is our dedicated video hub for creator and publisher content. So most of you that are familiar with Facebook and Instagram brands know we're a very heavy newsfeed dominated type of platform. I would argue that's a format that we're very proficient at, that most people are familiar with, whether you're a consumer or an advertiser. But what we started to see was video started to move a little bit. People were watching longer form videos, people were craving more longer form videos, and newsfeed wasn't the best place to consume them. So a few years ago, we started a global rollout of what we're called Facebook Watch, which is our place for relatively more premium, longer form videos that people wanted to watch on average 26 minutes, for example, as opposed to a very fast scrolling newsfeed. With that, we had the opportunity to create a new ad format. And that ad format we call in-stream reserve. It's mid-roll advertisements. And it also is a very different way of advertising for us. As you guys may know, we're very auction-based and we're very audience-based, and you don't buy content on our platform historically. You buy audience on our platform. But with this product, we're like, that's probably not going to work as well if we're going to try and get in a more established, traditional going concern. And so we created in-stream ads. And so we call it in-stream reserve. And it's very different for us. So one, you can buy it reservable, which is very different for Facebook, not auction-based. We fixed the price. And we tried to pull out our top, most brand-safe inventory that was in there. We'll talk a lot about that towards the end. We also made a very concerted effort, and this was really my rallying cry internally, is like, let's try to meet the market exactly where it is. We have a habit of trying to change the market, changing market perceptions and saying, that's wrong, this is right, and this is where things are going. With this particular case, I think with respect to video, there's so much going on and so much evolution and transformation. We thought the right move would be to start where everyone else is, get inside the business a little bit, and then try to understand how we could change it from the inside a little bit. But the first cost of entry for us was meeting the market where it is. And so to that, we worked on, if you guys may know Facebook for our targeting capabilities, we started with just targeting on Nielsen demos. And that was a very hard thing for us to do in the sense that we had to kind of explain to everybody why we were taking our advanced targeting and really bring it down to a much more simpler basis. But it was because it was a more common currency. So we did that. And then we managed everything through insertion order, which is new for us and old for everybody else, but I think it's a really interesting step of empathy and things like that. It's working very, very well for us. So how's it going? So it's been an exciting year for us. In our first year, I think we were still welcome into the marketplace. I think the reason was, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a second, but there's a big opportunity. You could call that there's a big problem. There's a lot of challenges the way things are working right now. And I think the audiences have moved a lot faster than advertisers have on consumption. And so what I wanted to talk about is as we kind of go on that journey, we found some things that were slowing us down, some things that both slowed us down and sped us up, and then some things that we think we did that could actually speed things along. I think that's also important to understand, like what things actually helped us through this. So that's kind of where we're going to go through our observation. So the first thing is, one thing that slows down is viewing habits have really evolved very significantly as consumers. I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to read through these stats. I think everyone in this room can either relate to them personally or know people that have or read a report that has. But the general idea is that while viewing consumption has changed radically, we're very much doing things the exact same way. I know you talked about, Ken, 2006. I don't know how radically different the marketplace was in 2006. There were still upfronts, there were things like that. So I think things still happen in a very similar way to they did, even though a lot has changed underneath. But generally, we start with similar place that we always have. I'm not saying that's wrong, but I just think we start to look at like how has that actually limited us and slowed us down, and where do we maybe want to start to challenge some of those things on the fringes. So one of the things that I think is slowing us down is the conversation about the small screen versus mobile. And as one of the largest, if not the largest, mobile advertising platforms, I think it's our responsibility to sort of myth bust a little bit here on what small screen is versus mobile. So when we say mobile, when we say small screen, I think most of you guys think of them synonymously. This is our mobile device that we all have in our pockets with us 24 hours a day. Unfortunately, checking them too many of those 24 hours a day. But I think what's different is mobile behavior. If you take it away from the device and look at the consumer, it's about moving around. It's checking in between or right before a meeting, or maybe you sat down this morning, you woke up, it's the first thing you looked at, and you're texting, or you're looking at Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or those types of things. That's a different consumption behavior. You're in a different frame of mind. You're trying to go in and go out really, really quickly. The small screen is also what a lot of people are using to watch long-form content in a very sedentary, non-mobile environment, but with a very small screen. I think one of the things that was surprising to me was when we talked about video and we talked about Facebook, we entered this marketplace, we started conversations with many, many advertisers and agencies. Like, so I understand what you guys are doing. Is it on the big screen? I get people are watching for 26 minutes. I understand that the content's really, really different. How do we get them on the big screen? I think one of the concerns we have is like, tell me exactly why that matters from a data perspective. If the people are really watching it and they're very focused on it and they're engaged in a very premium mindset, or I guess I'll call it TV or video mindset, does it matter so much? And I would say the answer is probably somewhere in between. I think we're over-invested in how much it matters, but it matters. And so I think that was our observation of like, we want to kind of find that happy medium and not be so religious about the size of the piece of glass that this is on. I think you may or may not be surprised at how focused people are on that still. I think the other important thing that we notice is obviously the trend of advertiser-supportive content versus non-advertiser-supported content. And I don't think we're making enough of a distinction in these conversations about the audience that's actually watching these things. And I think that's a habit that we're in. We go to the upfronts, we talk about the shows, and we talk about what we're going to record or what we're excited to watch. And as we know, that's wonderful until about September 30th, and October rolls around, and it flips right back to, oh my gosh, where'd all the people go? What's going on with the audience? And I think we have to find more of a middle ground there about talking about what's the expected audience, who we're really trying to reach. If you go back as far as in history and talk about how content really evolved and why this trend happened is, I guess that's a question I want to leave you guys with. Are we undervaluing the small screen? But also when we talk about content, I think it's like, how does the content actually drive the audience behavior and how does it drive attention? And I do think we're making this shift. I would argue we're making it, but we're holding on to some of our old core tenets, such as over-appreciating and over-evaluating the content itself, when the question should be, who's watching that content? And so at Facebook, what we did to kind of, I guess, walk the walk versus just talk the talk is we analyzed people's engagement with video and their desire to talk more and said, well, how are people actually finding video? If we want to focus on moving people to where is audience and how do we help you guys predict for audience, we really looked at three different things. The first was discovery and how people are actually finding content today. And so on our platform, it's friend recommendations that are driving more discovery than anything else. I don't think this is a new concept. This is the water cooler concept. This is the way real good content always finds itself. I saw this show, or I literally commented on it, and you see that I commented on it, or I watched it on TV, and then I go to my social media, and I actually talk about it. But people are really at the center of how distribution happens or popularity happens. I think that's really important, and we wanted to capitalize on that. The second was search. People still like to find things and look for things and be introduced to things. And that's one we made a big investment in our watch surface and our watch platform for that search capability. But social is a really another thing that I think we were, even as a social network, even as the company that I guess probably benefits the most from a lot of this social online conversation, when we launched Live, we looked at the conversations that were starting to happen, and they were much richer than I think anyone had been realizing and capitalizing on. And so we wanted to take this whole zeitgeist of what's happening when people are talking about shows and engaging with them to bring you deeper into the content. And so that was the third thing that we sort of looked at. So I think the other thing that's important is, there's still that prevailing belief that increasing investments in content will attract those audiences. So it's if we build it, they will come. Let me tell you, someone that's in a more new economy brand with all these new apps and services launching, it's not that simple. There's more content than any of us can find, and so I think you have to do more than just produce it. And that's sort of what we're starting to find. And so when we look at these audiences, we use it as a proxy. I mean, I think you go back to the old P&G example of they built soap operas to find people that were interested in their products. I think now we're at an age where you don't actually have to build the content in order to get the audience. You can just find the audience and understand the content that they're watching. And that's one of the big things that we're starting to understand, I think. Look, I don't want to say we're overly distracted about what really matters, but I do think we need to focus on it a little bit more. I think coming into the conversation, I remember there was an article that came out a few months ago around Game of Thrones no longer having any more seasons, and how that was a big blow to the advertising industry. And as someone that is trying to understand and decrypt this whole thing, I'm like, there aren't any ads in Game of Thrones. There haven't ever been any ads in Game of Thrones. But that was such a commonplace, and I won't mention the publication. It wasn't MediaPost, but I won't mention the publication, but I think it was such an generally accepted principle that we get worried about these different things. I think if people talk about what their favorite shows are, they talk a lot about a show they see on Netflix, which doesn't have ads. And I think it's also important. So we're here at Gurney's, where I would think it's fair to say less than 1% of the population probably comes out to Montauk and enjoys themselves, and so let's call them luxury consumers. I think we're at a point where if you can afford to pay for content, you probably do. You probably watch more of it. I'm saying probably, but the statistics actually show that you do. And that content doesn't have any ads in it. So if you take like a luxury brand or even like Gurney's and how they want to advertise, if they went after the most premium audiences to come here and tried to reach them on an advertising supported model exclusively, they wouldn't find these people. And so when you start to look at audience versus the premiumness of shows, I think you start to open your mind a little bit to what we need to do and just change that conversation just a bit. And that's what we're really working on. So what do we find when we actually started to do all of this? Yes, you can take a picture. I made it big. So I think one thing we started to focus on audience and who was really coming after it, we sort of found that sweet spot of where we wanted to be and where our audience was. So the first thing we did, we focused on accuracy. How do we accurately reach those audiences? So as you know, the old adage is, TV isn't accurate, it's broad reach, and you only pay for the people that you want to reach. And I think that's fine for a lot of brands. But if accuracy does start to matter, you're paying for it somehow, because that's wasted impressions that someone else could benefit from. So we really wanted to be much more efficient. So when we looked at the way we were targeting, we were able to hit 2 times as much as TV, 2 times as accurate as TV targeting. That's not a really surprising stat. I think a lot of digital properties have this benefit. Facebook probably benefits from it a little bit more than others because we're not cookie-based, but we're login-based. But still, I think it's an important place to sort of aim. The second thing was incremental reach. And so we were able to find, when we did some studies with Nielsen, we were able to find 10.2% incremental reach relative to TV. So why is incremental reach important? Obviously, you guys are, hopefully everyone in this room is very familiar with the reach curve and how that all works. The incrementality is the part that's getting very, very costly. In that luxury example, I think that's where we're trying to complement quite significantly, and that's where we've been focused on. The last thing, and this works for us, but I think every platform needs to find their sweet spot, but we're very good with the younger audiences, as you might imagine. And that happens to be a challenge the industry is facing right now. It's not just about people that can afford non-advertising supported content, but the content changes for younger audiences, and the screen time changes a lot. They don't have TVs. They have mobile devices. Maybe they have a tablet. A tablet is their large screen. And so we focused on 22.7% of our audience is younger, specifically 18 to 24 as compared to TV that's just under 8%. So that's the third place we started to look. The last thing we wanted to do is we wanted to make the ad experience a little bit different. So we looked at our content, we looked at the audience, and we said, what can we do to make the ad experience more conducive so this doesn't become a thing that people try to escape from because the ad load is so heavy. And so one thing we do is we look at only 1 ad unit per ad break, giving the advertiser 100% share of voice. This is really important because I think what advertisers are trying to do is now cut through the larger pods and get their message through. If there is only 1 ad in the pod, it's a lot easier to cut through. You can actually shorten the content length, the advertising length. And so we only look at 15-second ads roughly. We also are able to then do a non-skippable environment without affecting view duration at all, which is really nice if you only have 1 ad. So we did that. And like I said, we have 5 to 15-second ad pods are allowed on our platform. Most people are doing 15s. Most of those are performing the best. So I think it's really just an interesting change for Facebook and maybe one that not everyone would have expected before we had launched. Let's leave that up there. So the last thing was, that's actually, I'm going to put this as a thing that's speeding us up, which you might find interesting. When we first started on this a few years ago, brand safety was a big concern. 90% of advertisers were concerned about brand safety in general. Most of that was directed towards ours and maybe a few other platforms. It was definitely slowing us down. As we met the market where its expectations were, we've actually found it sped up. So now, it's down from 90% just a year ago. 60% of marketers think brand safety is a serious problem. I know 60% sounds terrible, but coming from 90%, it's actually showing some great, great, great improvement. I want to talk to you about how we've done some of this stuff. One, we focus on our community and monetization standards. I think, obviously, we're in the news a lot about how we're working on this, and this is a journey that we continue to be on. But when we talk about our platform itself, people have to understand and have really good expectations about where their brands are running. The more we invest in this, the more consistent we and other platforms get, the more confidence, and that's, I think, a big part of why you've gone from 90 to 60%, is people just understand it a little bit better. Granted, we've changed some of our community standards, but the understanding along the way is what's getting there. We'll continue to do that. The other idea was like, this is a meet the market where it is. There's a standard for what the industry perceives as safe. We needed to adopt that standard. So for the video and TV product, we didn't try to redefine and reinvent what it should be. We literally adopted it. That's been challenging for us because a lot of our content doesn't qualify for monetization. So we have to be religious about really focusing on meeting it there and not having exceptions to that. Third is content review. And so one of the benefits of starting a platform from scratch, the Watch one specifically, was we got to write the rules on how we would do this. So every piece of content before it's monetized, it has a human person reviewing it, period. Every piece of content. And we figured out a scalable way to do that that I think is probably going to lead the industry in a lot of ways. But more importantly, that's not very exciting for traditional video and TV advertisers. That's table stakes. So on one hand, you're like, wow, it's really, really hard to do. On the other hand, it's table stakes. And I think that was the balance that we really focused on this year. And the last one's reporting transparency. We feel this is really important, that people know where their ad's going to run before they buy, and then where did it actually run afterwards, and was there any difference between that? And that's something we're continuing to work on, but it seems to be very, very important to everybody. The last thing that really sped us up was universal measurement. So rather than coming up with a whole bunch of standards that were very different, debating about viewability, debating about view-through rates, sound on all these types of things, we literally just said, we'll take exactly the measurements you guys are using, and we base it all on Nielsen. The video landscape is already fragmented enough. They didn't need any more definitions from us. So we want, TRPs, GRPs, all the normal language. That's exactly how we measure, and we work right with existing MMM models and things like that. So I think this is one of the ways that really helped us as a platform speed up. And so I think the last question I have for you guys is, how can we continue to simplify the marketplace together? I think we took a lot of learnings from a lot of the partners that were already in the marketplace, who worked with all of the agencies, listened to their feedback before we launched our product to make sure we had it right. And we still have a long ways to go, but I think simplifying it will turn this TV and video summit into more of the video conversation and not such a debate, I think, as often we still have. And so I just want to leave you with that. And this is how we built it, to simplify the marketplace, like I said. So these are all things we talked about. Finally, I just want to say thank you. I'm around, Anjali from my team's around, but I really want to engage you guys in more of a dialogue. I think this is a journey we'll be on for a few years. We're excited to do this, and we've had success in year one thanks to many of you guys in this room, so thank you. And, little plug, if you haven't seen any shows on Facebook Watch and you want to engage, Limetown with Jessica Biel just came out. It's pretty awesome. I watched it this weekend. So there's maybe an interesting way to get started. So thank you guys very much. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for kicking us off. You said you had a colleague here as well? Oh, very good. Okay, raise your hand. Yep, all right. Is it Andrea? Anjali. Oh, Anjali. Okay, great. So if you have questions for Anjali or Eric or what Facebook's up to, please grab these guys. You'll be here for the duration, I take it? All right, great. So what we're going to do, I'm John with Media Post. I'm not just some random guy, just showed up. It's a nice place, though. I comb the beach every morning, and I saw there was a conference here, so I thought I'd come in. Plus, the eggs are great, and the coffee's warm. So now we're going to take about 5 minutes just to refresh the room here a little bit, and then we'll continue with the rest of the program. Josie from Sleep Number is here, and she'll be kicking things off here shortly. So take about 5 minutes, refresh your coffees, hit the bathroom if you need to, and we'll be right back. Thanks.